Chào mừng các bạn đã quay trở lại với Her TV. Ngày hôm nay tham gia với mình có bạn Hà. Hà đã sinh ra ở Việt Nam nhưng mà lớn lên ở Bỉ. Vì thế mà trong ngày hôm nay thì chúng mình sẽ nói chuyện bằng tiếng Anh để có thể tiện hơn trong cái việc trao đổi và thể hiện được rõ cái ý kiến của Hà về vấn đề mà ngày hôm nay chúng mình sẽ trò chuyện với các bạn. Hy vọng rằng là đây là một chủ đề có thể là hơi khác, những ý kiến có vẻ hơi lạ so với số đông, nhưng mà sẽ nhận được cái phản hồi và đóng góp lại ý kiến từ những thính giả của Her TV. Chào Hà.
Chào chị.
Okay, so, well, do you want to tell us a little bit about, how you grow up in Belgium and when you come back to Vietnam?
Sure. So I was born in Hoa Binh province, and then I moved to Belgium when I was 2 years old. So I was raised there without speaking any Vietnamese, so that's why my Vietnamese is not so great. And then I came back to Vietnam in October 2017. And then just decided to stay here and live among Vietnamese people and enjoy the culture. And that's what I've been doing since.
That's great. The fact that you're spending most of your life in another country is obviously the reason why you don't speak much Vietnamese. And that's fine though. I mean, you still know enough to get by.
To get by, yes. And it's improving every day, so yeah.
Okay. Maybe next time we'll do all in Vietnamese to test how your Vietnamese goes.
Okay.
So tell me, when you come back to Vietnam, how is it? Was it a shock of cultural? Did you able to get on with everyone, the neighbors?
It wasn't very much a shock in culture for most of the things, I would say. It was actually the reverse. It was more of a relief in some ways, because in a way I never really settled within the European culture, and that never really felt truly as my home. And then once I came to Vietnam and I met amazing people and everyone was really understanding and really helpful and kind, it just felt like the right move to just stay. And yeah.
That's great. I'm happy to know that you enjoy the environment and everything here. Tell us a little bit about your works, of the project that you're doing.
Yeah, I've been doing a little bit of everything since being in Vietnam, and before that, when I just came to Vietnam, I came without an actual plan. So someone gave me a job as a translator back then, so I was doing that for a little bit. And then afterwards, after a few months, I started working with a Vietnamese artist, and I studied social educational art back in Belgium. So working with this really well-known artist was something that I could only dream of. So we did a lot of projects, and then we developed a festival called Dao Xuan Chin. That was in March 2019. After that, I've done just a few smaller projects with events, creating, but I'm also looking at building my own projects in the future. So, and that's exciting.
Cool. I'm very excited to hear about all that. I mean, I know about some of your project before, and maybe we'll have a chance to feature it sometime.
That would be lovely. That would be lovely, yes.
Let's just go straight into the topic for today. So Vietnam is still a very traditional, sort of a little conservative sort of society, right? And it's a norm for people to grow up and get married and have children. But there is a rising numbers of opinions that is a little bit different. With the young generations and generation, people having kids later, and some people choose not to have kids. What is your opinion about that?
Well, I would put myself in that last category of people not wanting to have kids. And I have put a lot of thought in that, why I would say that, because it's not just Vietnam that has those more traditional views. It's also definitely still the case in Europe, where everyone is still, it's maybe a little bit more open, but people are still definitely asking, when are you going to have kids? Or when are you getting married? Maybe marriage is not so much a pressing matter of society anymore, but if you say, I don't want to have kids, people definitely still look weirdly at you. And in a society such as Vietnam, it's even more so the case. So you always have to defend or argue why you don't want to have kids in a very elaborate way, so people don't just think, oh, she's crazy for not wanting to have kids.
Have you had this conversation with, your family or neighbor, like people like older, and how's that experience with you?
I don't think I've had this conversation with people of a very different generation yet. No, I can't recall that.
Okay, that's maybe a difficult conversation to have, with the older generation. But even among us, I think everyone still have a very strong opinion about that. I mean, I didn't think that I would have kids. But once I have my son, it's sort of like a mind-changing experience to me. So I understand why some people said, "Oh, you said you don't want kids because you're still young," and because it's a pure joy, having children is. There's a lot of responsibilities and there's a lot of headache, of course, but it's also
definitely
it's also something that makes you really, really happy in a way that is very difficult to explain. So why don't you want to have kids?
Where to start? So maybe also a little bit from there's a lot of reasons why I think that having children for myself is not a good idea. I think people always have a personal choice. So with this, I don't want to say like no one should have kids, because then humanity ceases to exist tomorrow and then we have a problem. But I do think for myself, there's a number of reasons, both more on a objective kind of in an objective kind of way, but also more subjective thing. And the objective, the biggest reason for me, let's start it again. Okay, so for me, there's a few different ways of seeing it, in an objective way and a subjective way. And the number one objectively for me is the environment. I am a very big what's the word?
Believer?
Yes, thank you. Not believer, because it's
activist?
Advocate, maybe? Yes, okay, advocate. Okay, sorry, I'm a very big advocate for everything that is environmentally wise, that we need to do better than the previous generation. And like it or not, but humans, just an actual human being, that is going to leave the biggest carbon footprint on this planet. So by creating extra life, you're going to put more strain on the environment. And for someone who has been so concerned about the environment, I try to recycle. I've been vegan for so many years to just try to lower that carbon footprint. I try to take the bicycle where I can, or public transport if I don't need to take a car, like just all these kind of small changes you can do individually. And then for people to be saying, yes, I care about the environment and I want to do everything, but then to keep having kids and kids and kids and kids, then I think, there's like a very, the link between those two, it doesn't match, you know? Because also in the whole children's market, everything is made out of plastic, like the toys. Diapers are, for example, something that is such a strain on the environment. There's definitely ways to be more sustainable as a parent, I can imagine, but just that whole, the totality of raising a new life from zero to, you know, you're kind of in a way responsible for a lifetime of pollution, to just say it like that. So that's objectively one of the things that I don't necessarily agree with. But then subjectively, there's just the feeling of, maybe I should give a little bit of background in that. So the way I was raised, I didn't really have a very happy upbringing. And I come out of the system of child protection. So just from that aspect, or like having been through that experience, I don't think everyone necessarily should have kids. And with how it is today, there are millions and millions of kids that are placed in either an orphanage or in an institution because for some reason their parents cannot take care of them. And that can be money-wise poverty, that can be drug-related, that can be social problems, like they have big issues in their families. There's a lot of different things that just make that people sometimes are not able to take care for their children. And that's a very sad thing. And I just think that instead of just having more kids and more kids, why not take care of the kids that are on this planet already and make sure that they have a qualitative life, instead of, in that sense, it's more about quality over quantity, I suppose, if that makes sense.
So you're saying, the way I understand is that you're saying, yeah, it is hard. It is hard for the environment to having new kid, but all the arguments about joys in relationship, you can also fulfill that by adopting children instead of having your own.
I would not say adopting. I also have my own reasons to not necessarily adopt, and that's from my own background. But I think there are other ways to take care of children who need it. For example, volunteering in institutions or helping with whatever funds or support you can give to these organizations or people who oftentimes do really good work. There's also something called the foster care system. I don't know if you have that here in Vietnam. But I'm a very strong believer in, if you can take care of a child and if you really want to, that there's enough people in need who actually need it more than just bringing a new life in this world.
But you know, people would, there's always the argument of, your own children is always better, the power of the bloodline.
But why is that? Why is that? Why do people think that?
Because, as someone who have a kid, I can say that I'm not a big fan of children, but I like my son. So I have a connection with him. I have this really hard to explain, sort of like mysteriously strong connection with this one human being that is, I would say none of the relationship that I've ever had in my life have ever felt that way. It's a very special kind of feeling, and that is why people really, especially people with like strong family dynamics, like they really love and trust the people who are related to them. So then that's why people said, you know, the bloodlines is important, and it is actually also in our DNA, you know, biologically. Our DNA is like, it core purpose is to duplicate.
I know.
To reproduce.
Yeah.
So then, you know, our brain subconsciously, we always want to have our own versions
Or offspring,
of
yes,
of a human being. I think that, you know, I would semi understand what you said when you said that you wasn't growing up in a very happy family, and you're growing up in the system, the government system, right? And so you have experienced firsthand what it like for a child to not having a traditional family, who, you know, parents who care for them, or sibling, something like that. And that is a reality. That's a reality, is that a lot of children not, you know, having a good family to love them, to raise them, to protect them. Not only like orphans or kid with a broken family, put it on court, with single parent raising children. Actually, it happened to everybody. People, my friend who had both parents growing up, they still having a lot of, you know, psychological problem, because, you know, the family dynamic is very complicated.
And that also begs the question, like, sometimes I think I just wonder, are people actually fit to take care of children? You know, like, most people, I would say, don't really like have this sense of like, yes, I want to have children, but don't really have put a lot of thought in, like, how do I want to raise this child? How do I want to communicate? What do I want to teach this young person? How do I want them to be when they grow up? Like, what kind of values and morals and what kind of ideas can I give towards this being so he or she or they can flourish for the rest of their life? And I feel like most of the people maybe have a vague sense of how they see things, but maybe also not always have the tools to bring that into reality. You know, people have this idea, but then don't really have the way to communicate these things, or have morals and values, but then it comes out in a very weird way, you know. And then it's like, but are we actually ready to, like, have babies? Should we not maybe prepare a bit more, read more, study more on child psychology, on the progression of how children go on about things, you know?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would agree that a lot of people have kids as sort of like a subconscious decision, like, don't really think about, do you really want to have a kid? Because when you raise the question of would you want to have a kid or not, most people will be like, what? Why are you even asked that? Of course I want to have a kid. You know, but then people also have kids for the wrong reason, when you don't really think about.
Or they want to save their marriage, or they, I don't know.
Literally.
Exactly. And it's just, I think it's so sad for the child, because that human being never asked to be put in a situation like that, you know, and it's not their fault to be brought into a world where they are basically seen as like the savior of a relationship, or all the hopes and dreams of your own failed life, you know.
Yeah, exactly. That is also something that I have a very strong feeling about, is that the parent who want their children to be a certain people, or to have a certain job, without consider whether the child A, fitting for that role, or B, even wanted it at all.
Exactly.
But that's that rolling into parenthood, though.
It's also part of society, right? For example, I know here in Vietnam there's a lot of pressure being put onto, like, oh, you need to have this kind of career and you need to do this and you need to bring kind of this image of welfare and prosperity, and it's good for our family as well. It's not just you, it's for the whole family.
Yeah.
And so
yeah, that's the traditional way of looking at a humans. It's kind of like you have to tick the box.
yeah,
You know, did you go to college? Did you get a job? Did you get married? Did you get children?
yes,
children?
indeed.
And then it's like okay, finally, did I tick all the box? All right, can I rest now?
Probably not, because then you have a house to pay off.
Oh yeah, and then if you have a kid already, then you need to buy a house when you have the
Exactly.
second child. Blah blah blah.
Yeah,
So
yeah, it is. It's, that's the thing. I feel like for myself, I really know that I don't want to have kids for all these reasons. But I think it's just a shame a lot of people go into having kids without really having put thought into it. And then you just see a child kind of, it's just sad because people are not prepared to have kids, like either financially or emotionally or intellectually not really prepared and capable of.
yeah.
And like, I am not a person to say like, oh, you should raise your child like this. But I do know from, I've worked enough with kids back in Belgium and here in Vietnam, and also to just see that some things just don't work, and that you're just putting trauma on little beings, and then that's going to result into years of therapy to get that undone. So, you know.
Yeah. So far, what we have been discussed is it's not good for the environment. B, we may not be prepared to have kids, to be not just to be a parent, but to be a good parent, right? Which actually remind me of this very controversial conversation that happened years ago, actually, way before I had kids. There was this singer who was, I'm not going to name her, who was very outspoken about, she said having kid is selfish and nobody should have kids. And that create a big storm on social media with people like arguing about it and shaming her and saying a lot of bad things. Do you think that you share some of that idea of comments?
I think it goes in both ways. I think people not wanting to have kids is that's selfish, but also people wanting to have kids is selfish. And I think in a baseline, whatever we do is kind of selfish. Like, if you think about, like, I had this conversation with a friend a long time ago, and he posted this once, everything you do is selfish. And the longer you think about it, it's all true. But I think having kids, of course, it's selfish. You kind of want to have, like you said, you want to have that relationship, that bond that you don't have with anyone else. And from other conversations I've had, people say like, oh, but who's going to take care of me when I'm old? And I'm like, yeah, that's selfish. You want someone to be there when you're old and you can't do anything on your own anymore, you know? Or people to say, but yeah, they make me happy. But, you know, that's also a selfish reason. And then on the other hand, like for me, I know I don't want to have kids because that will restrict the things I want to do in my life. If I want to go travel or take on a very impulsive project and I need to like just spend a lot of time doing that, then I won't have time for, you know, like educating and taking care of a child. So that is also a very selfish reason. But I think it goes both ways. It's you choose, and that's the thing with a conscious choice, right? You've put a lot of thought in it, and then you weigh that, and it's all because you want certain things in your life, which is in that way selfish. And I don't think it's a necessarily bad kind of being selfish if you've put a lot of thought in it. I think it's more selfish to say like, I will have, for example, I'm not saying I'm not having anyone in particular in mind, but if you say like I will have 5 kids, so they will take care of me when I am old, I think that's a very selfish way of thinking. Besides just like, I don't know. So I can definitely relate to that statement in that sense, but like I said before, I don't think no one should be having kids, because then, you know, then it's also over. But I do think that people should think more about the choice of, do we really want to have kids, or is it something that society tells us to do?
Yeah, I completely agree with you on the note that, you know, everything that we do should be a conscious decision. Because yes, essentially all of the decision is kind of selfish. I do agree with that. Even if you think that you are, I'm doing a lot of charities, I'm helping a lot of people, well, the first person you're helping is actually yourself.
Exactly.
Feel better.
Exactly.
Right.
Otherwise, you wouldn't do it, because you get something out of it, right?
Yeah, you do feel good. That's why you do it. Like, which was sort of come back to one thing that I was gonna ask when you said that having kids is really bad for the environment. I was gonna say, but you have a dog.
I do, but then again, I don't think like my dog is consuming that much resources or needs that amount of.
If you've heard this story, but there is a research that say that a dog have a bigger carbon footprint
Really?
than a car.
Wow.
Yeah.
I would love to see that. But actually, you know what? That does not surprise me, because dogs are omnivores, so they do need meat in their diet.
Yeah.
And the meat industry has a higher carbon footprint than the whole transport industry. So that actually does not surprise me now that I think of it. Yeah.
Obviously, it will still have a smaller carbon footprint than a human being.
Well, if something is alive for 15 years and something is alive for 80 years, hopefully, then that's a big difference. Yeah. But then also, I cannot imagine like a dog riding a car, or like buying a car or buying houses. Anyway, no, but if you can find that, I would love to see that.
I have that. I'll send it to you.
Okay, great. Well, thank you.
Do you know this comedian called Tim Mitchell?
I've heard of his name.
Yeah, he's hilarious. You have to see him. He is Australian, I believe, but he is in the UK right now. Or maybe he's from the UK. I'm going to cut that part. Yes, Tim Mitchell is sort of a comedian that do most of his thing and in song. So he's like, he wanted to be a singer-songwriter, but then he's starting to develop like the way that he write his lyrics is very literate. Okay. So it's like this morning I wake up and I just feel so something like that, you know. Okay. And it's very it's very refreshing. Okay. It's very refreshing to hear someone talking about like a very normal, common thing and in a very funny sort of sense. So he had a song, one of my favorite songs, called The Fence. So he said, I'm standing for the fence and standing on the fence, something like that. Okay. And he's talking about how everything is not completely black or white. And so he said, your dog have a bigger carbon footprint than a car. And I'm like, what? Is that real? And then so I look it up. That's how I knew it. I'm like, oh my God, it is real. It is had a bigger carbon footprint than a car. Yeah. That's how I know about that information.
Thank you.
I'll send it to you.
Thank you. I also think in that sense, and that's maybe me just talking the decision to like have a dog, but in that sense, it's also, I got my dog through an adoption agency, which to me, it leans into the previous argument of like there's already like so many kids that need some kind of support in some sense, that if like I'm not saying we should like abandon every single living being and just say like you know, get rid of everything, but I'm saying like the life that's already on this earth, instead of like adding more to that in just conditions that are not quite right for anyone, try to improve the conditions for the human beings and the dogs that are already on this planet, you know. And in that sense, maybe, you know, like it's me trying to good talk the fact that I have a dog, but I didn't ask like a breeder, oh, I want to have a puppy, can you like get a dog pregnant and make sure that it's cute and stuff. It was just like, oh, there's like this whole amount of dogs here that need a new home, and then I was like, okay, sure, I'll take one. And in that sense, I'm not saying like you should go to kids and be like, okay, which one can I take here? But but I do think we need to like think about how we spend our resources, and especially as this world keeps on industrializing more and more, and we are using more and more resources, just like try to think about, what are we actually doing? Do we want to do it in this way? Do we want to do it in this way? And then the arguments like, what do we want to leave for the next generation, you know? And it's not just for the human generation, it's just for everyone on this planet. What do we want to just have an earth that is unsustainable for everyone? Or do we just want to keep things as clean as possible, you know?
Yeah, that is another topic that we should talk about, is the environment. It's going to take a long time though, because there's so many things to cover.
Exactly.
But I'd love to talk to you again about the environment and what we can do.
Yeah, me too.
So we'll come back next time for that.
Okay, great.
Okay. Cảm ơn các bạn đã theo dõi chương trình ngày hôm nay. Mình rất hy vọng rằng là các bạn sẽ gửi những đóng góp, những comment và những câu chuyện phản hồi về nội dung này với Her TV. Hẹn gặp các bạn trong một chương trình lần sau.